You ever feel that little twinge? You know the one. Someone mentions their new promotion, that amazing vacation they just took, or how perfect their relationship is. And of course you have. We all have. It's that deeply human, sometimes really uncomfortable feeling of comparison. It feels like we are just hardwired to measure ourselves against other people. But why? In this explainer, we're going to break down the science of envy and why we just can't seem to stop comparing ourselves.
So check this out. Imagine you're at brunch with friends, and you start talking about this whole self-comparison thing. Everyone's admitting they do it, even when they know it's kind of pointless. Then one friend says, actually, I feel like I compare myself to other people relatively rarely. And after a second, someone else just has to ask, you mean compared to other people? It's so funny because it just nails the simple truth. Even when we think we're not playing the comparison game, we're still playing.
And that really gets you thinking, right? Why? Why are we so compelled to see how we stack up against everyone else? Is this some kind of modern flaw, a product of social media? Or is there something way, way deeper going on in our psychology and even in our brains? Okay, let's get into it. To really get this, we've got to go back a bit, because it turns out this urge to compare ourselves isn't a new thing at all. It's actually a fundamental part of how we figure out who we are. It's not a bug in our system, it's a feature.
This whole idea was first really unpacked by a social psychologist named Leon Festinger way back in 1954. He called it social comparison theory. And the core idea is pretty simple, but it's huge. Human beings can't really define themselves in a vacuum. To have any idea who we are, we have to look at who other people are. So, according to Festinger, we do this for two main reasons. First, to reduce uncertainty. Am I a good cook? Am I a fast runner? The only way to really know is to see how you measure up against others. And second, we do it to define ourselves. These little comparisons become the actual building blocks of our identity. And here's where the theory gets even more interesting. We don't just compare ourselves to anybody. We're most likely to compare ourselves to a coworker who's at our level, not, the CEO. And get this, there's this weird defense mechanism where if comparing ourselves to someone makes us feel bad, we might just kind of start disliking them. And finally, the more we value being part of a group, like our team at work or our local book club, the more pressure we feel to match their vibe and their abilities. Okay, so that's the classic psychology. But now, modern neuroscience is taking all of this a huge step further. It turns out that envy isn't just one big, singular feeling. Researchers have actually found that it comes in distinct flavors, and each one has its own unique trigger. Let's see how this builds on that old foundation. A big meta-analysis identified 3 types. First up is trait envy, which is more about your personality. Like, are you just generally a person who's sensitive to your social standing? Second is social comparison envy. This is that classic keeping up with the Joneses thing Festinger was talking about. And third is love envy, that really intense, very specific fear of losing someone you care about to a rival. Now, understanding these different types is absolutely crucial, because it lets scientists look inside our brains with scanners and see if they're actually processed differently. And, well, what they found is pretty fascinating. By pulling together the results from 13 different studies using fMRI, that's functional magnetic resonance imaging, which is basically just a way to watch the brain light up and work in real time, researchers were able to start mapping out the neural pathways for each kind of envy. And it turns out, each one lights up a different neighborhood in the brain. For trait envy, that general sensitivity to where you stand, it's the brain's threat detection centers that just fire up. For the classic social comparison envy, the activity is in the parts of the brain responsible for self-reflection, literally the where do I fit in part. And for love envy, it's a powerful mix of areas tied to reward, deep motivation, and even sexual arousal that become active. So what this means is our brain has these unique, specialized alarm systems for each type of envy. But here's the twist. When it comes to shutting those alarms off, managing the feeling, the brain uses the same central command center for all 3. Okay, so this is the crucial scientific takeaway right here. The way our brain creates the feeling of envy is specialized. It's different for each type. But the way our brain manages or regulates that feeling is generalized. It relies on a shared set of high-level cognitive skills, our ability to think rationally and get a grip on our emotional response.
All right, that was some pretty dense neuroscience. So what? What does all this mean for us, Sitting here comparing our careers, our houses, our lives. How do we actually use this information? The key insight is this, that instinct to compare. It's not going away. It is wired in there deep. So the goal isn't to somehow stop comparing altogether, because that's impossible. The real goal is to understand your motivation for doing it in the first place. And it really boils down to this. Are you comparing for self-assessment or for self-enhancement? Self-assessment is the healthy kind. That's looking at your colleague's amazing presentation to figure out how to make yours better. It's using other people as a benchmark for your own growth. Self-enhancement, on the other hand, that's the toxic stuff. That's when you're just using others to make yourself feel better, or worse, to confirm your own insecurities. When our motivation is just self-enhancement, we get stuck in this place. It really is like a bizarre hall of mirrors where we're all just these distorted reflections of each other, constantly trying to find an angle that makes us look good, and usually just feeling worse in the process. And I mean, come on, where is this hall of mirrors more disorienting than on social media? It has basically taken our natural human tendency to compare and put it on steroids, but it's completely changed the rules of the game. This is probably the most perfect description of online comparison ever. We take the messy, complicated, everyday reality of our own lives, our blooper reel, and we judge it against the perfectly curated, filtered, and edited highlight reel that everyone else puts out there for the world to see. It's a game you just can't win. So, given everything we now know, from 1950s psychology all the way to modern brain scans, what can we actually do about it? How do we navigate this deep-seated instinct in a healthier way? Okay, this brings us to the first big principle to remember. You're never gonna fully stop comparing yourself to other people. It's not gonna happen. The real power comes from just becoming aware of that tendency. By simply noticing when you're doing it, you can check in with your motives and choose to only engage when it's actually productive. When it's for real self-assessment, not for a quick, cheap hit of self-enhancement. Which leads right into the second key principle. The power is in the question you ask yourself next. So the next time you feel that twinge, just pause and ask yourself this. Am I looking at them to get better? Am I looking at them just to feel better? Or, and this is a sneaky one, am I just looking for evidence to confirm what I already think about myself, good or bad? Because here's the final kind of mind-bending twist in this whole thing. We think we're doing some sort of objective measurement, but we're not even close. There are all these layers of abstraction that we pretty much never think about. You are never, ever actually comparing yourself to another person. You are comparing your idea of yourself, your own internal story, loaded with all its biases and insecurities, to your idea of them, which is based on that highly polished highlight reel they show the world. It's basically a battle of fictions. So the most powerful question isn't, how do I stack up? It's, what happens when I stop believing these ideas are even real in the first place?
If you like this video and want to watch more such videos exploring questions about the brain, social behavior, and decision-making, subscribe to The Cognitive Thought and share and like